Hello everyone, it's Maki here. Today, we are taking a look at the mobile suit that features in the Gundam Wing story. It's called the Scorpio. It features in the story battlefield of the PACIFISTs. This official story depicts events that take place between the TV anime series and Endless Worlds. Some of you may already be familiar with it, as it has also appeared in video games. The pilot is Victor Gaines. He is the leader of an organization called the Perfect Peace People, which advocates peace. However, his true goal was to rule through absolute military power. He believed that peace could be achieved by prohibiting everyone except his own organization from possessing military force. Scorpio is a symbol of fear created to make Victor's ambitions a reality. But what kind of mobile suit is it exactly? Depending on your interpretation, it may come as a surprise that Scorpio can even be considered a Gundam-type mobile suit. Today, let's take a closer look at what makes Scorpio so fascinating. If you'd like to support my channel, please consider becoming a member for just 99 cents per month. As a thank you, you'll receive a name badge and exclusive comment stamps. Now then, let's begin our research. Oz increased its influence within the United Air-Sphere Alliance by deploying numerous mobile suits. Then with Operation Daybreak, it finally launched a rebellion against the Alliance. Following the success of the rebellion, Oz effectively became the ruler of Earth and began developing a new weapon, the Mobile Doll. Unlike mobile suits, mobile dolls are unmanned weapons that do not endanger a pilot's life. These seemingly humanitarian weapons were used to systematically wipe out the remaining Alliance forces that resisted Oz. Having strengthened its already overwhelming authority, Oz sought an even more powerful weapon. That weapon was Scorpio. However, the project remains shrouded in mystery. Even Ladian, who served as an aide to Toei's Q3 Nutter, did not know all the details. She only knew that there had once been plans for a large mobile armor during the design stage. However, it was never deployed in actual combat. Tsubov, a technical officer of ours, led Scorpio's development. He repurposed a destroyed United Air-Sphere Alliance Space Force base into a facility dedicated to mobile doll development. Scorpio was stationed there as a defensive mobile doll, assigned to protect the base. The mobile doll base was deployed with large numbers of Virgo units already completed and operational. Scorpio was programmed to attack anyone who approached the facility. Consequently, it became a feared presence known as the Watchdog. The most distinctive feature of the Scorpio is that its armor is made of Gundam alloy. In the world of Gundam Wing, mobile suits built from this alloy are often referred to as Gundams. In the TV anime series, the term Gundam type is commonly used to refer to the 5 Gundams developed from the Wing Gundam Zero. However, the novel version also states that the tall geese was made of Gundam alloy and that its development Konsei was Gundam. Depending on your interpretation of the setting, therefore Scorpio could also be considered a Gundam type. The armor made from Gundam alloy provides extraordinary defensive capabilities. Additionally, the alloy's exceptional durability enables the creation of extremely powerful weapons. The completed Scorpio achieved performance levels high enough to fight a Gundam on equal terms. In fact, there is a scene in which the Ultron Gundam piloted by Wu Fei struggles against the Scorpio. Earlier, I introduced Scorpio as a large mobile doll. However, it actually possesses a mobile suit mode as well. Although it normally operates as a mobile doll, it can also be directly piloted by a human operator. The reason for this design remains unknown. By the time Scorpio was developed, the mobile doll system had already been finalized. During the early stages of developing mobile dolls, there were models equipped with cockpits for human pilots. Once the mobile doll system had been perfected though, there was no reason to include a cockpit. Could it have been designed in accordance with Torres' belief that humans should fight with their own hands? However, as previously mentioned, even Radiant, who served directly under Torres, knew very little about Scorpio. At this point, no further information is available. This is one of those details that is open to each fan's interpretation. Another notable feature of Scorpio is its transformation mechanism. It can transform from mobile armor form to mobile suit form. However, this process requires the unit to discard some of its parts. Like Grey Guzzi in the Universal Century series, Scorpio is essentially a mobile suit that can only transform once. When Scorpio appears in video games, it can repeatedly switch between mobile armor and mobile suit forms, but this is simply an adjustment to improve gameplay. It has excellent performance in both forms: high mobility mobile armor form and strong close-range combat ability in mobile suit form. This far surpasses that of most other mobile suits. However, it has a weakness due to the numerous powerful weapons and propulsion systems it is equipped with. It has become about 1.5 times larger than an average mobile suit. This weakness was almost irrelevant in actual combat. As previously mentioned, it performed well enough to put up a good fight against Wu-Fei's Ultron Gundam. However, its enormous size led to soaring production costs. Consequently, the Scorpio never entered mass production. Only one prototype was ever built, and the project was ultimately cancelled. Now let's take a look at Scorpio's weapons. First is the beam bayonet. This weapon is especially memorable because of its resemblance to a scorpion's claw. It's an enormous weapon. In fact, it's roughly the same size as an average mobile suit, such as a Leo. Although it is primarily used as a beam rifle, it can also generate a beam saber from the muzzle. The claw-like blades are also powerful enough to destroy mobile suits. In the story, it effortlessly obliterates a Leo. Unfortunately, the beam rifle never lands a direct hit on an enemy, so its exact firepower remains unknown. However, given that it fires beams nearly as thick as the entire body of the Wing Gundam Zero, it is likely to possess tremendous destructive power. The beam saber also never strikes an enemy, so its precise attack power remains unknown. Another interesting detail is that Scorpio carries two of these weapons in mobile armor form. However, after transforming into mobile suit form, it discards one and switches to carrying a shield. Next is the heat rod. This weapon can only be used in mobile armor form. It is mounted in a position that resembles a scorpion's tail. This weapon is also never used during the story. However, there is a scene in which explosions occur behind Scorpio after it moves at high speed. Given that it is made of Gundam alloy and was developed around the same time as the Gundam Epion, it is possible that it possesses offensive power comparable to the Epion's heat rod. Next are the micro-missiles. These weapons are mounted on the shoulders and chest. Each launcher carries 10 missiles, enabling Scorpio to fire a total of 30. Like many of Scorpio's other weapons, however, these missiles never score a direct hit on an enemy in the story. Finally, there is the AS Planet Dinner. Despite its name, it differs from the equipment used by Marius and Virgo. Instead, it is a handheld shield. The meaning behind the abbreviation AS has never been revealed. This shield is powerful enough to withstand the Twin Buster rifle of Wing Gundam Zero. It is exceptionally durable, and its protective capabilities played a significant role in enabling Scorpio to survive, albeit briefly, against the combined attacks of 3 Gundams. Now then, during the weapons section, I repeatedly mentioned that there are no scenes in the story where these weapons actually hit their targets. Scorpio first appears in the story as a mobile doll. In this form, he proves to be an extremely powerful weapon, managing to put up a good fight against the Ultron Gundam. However, the situation changes when Victor gains boards the machine as its pilot and transforms it into a mobile suit. At this point, Wing Gundam Zero and Gundam Hebians arrive to support Ultron Gundam. Victor is suddenly forced to fight 3 Gundams at once. The true extent of Victor's piloting skills is unknown. If he had possessed talent comparable to Zex, he would almost certainly have become famous. The other Gundam pilots, including Hero, had never even heard of Victor. Unfortunately, it's probably fair to say that he was nowhere near Zek's level. Even Zex himself was defeated in the one-on-one battle against Hero's Wing Gundam Zero. No matter how powerful the mobile suit Scorpio may have been, victory against 3 Gundams was simply impossible. Consequently, the Scorpio piloted by Victor never managed to land a single successful attack throughout the story. Because of this, many fans have concluded that Scorpio was actually stronger when operating as a mobile doll. As I've mentioned several times, it displayed enough combat ability to force Wu-Fei's Ultron Gundam onto the defensive and make him struggle. The concept of mobile doll software capable of challenging a Gundam pilot is fascinating in itself. Unfortunately, no detailed information about that software exists at this time. It is a tragic mobile suit that was defeated because it ended up in the hands of a weak pilot. That is Scorpio. Although the mass production plan for the Scorpio was cancelled, it does have a successor. This is the Cerberus machine, which features in the story Frozen Teardrop. As it features in the novel, its exact appearance has never been fully illustrated. However, the text provides a description. Cerberus is characterized by its entirely black color scheme. It is also stated that neither its design nor its onboard computer systems were changed. The novel even notes that Scorpio had already achieved perfection as a defensive weapon by the time it was completed. Cerberus seems to be essentially Scorpio with a new paint job. A total of 3 units were produced and gone to play active roles in the story. Additionally, a prototype of Scorpio appears in the G-Unit Operation Galliarest story. Its basic design is identical to the final version, but its color scheme has been changed to white. Later in the story, it becomes the mobile suit piloted by Roach Nocturno and is repainted red. As it is a prototype, it lacks the transformation mechanism found on the finished Scorpio. However, its mobility appears to be comparable to that of the finished Scorpio. One of its defining features is a pair of beam rifles capable of firing beams with the power of a battleship. That concludes today's research. Which aspect of the Scorpio did you find the most interesting? Personally, I found it fascinating that, although it is never officially called a Gundam, it can effectively be considered a Gundam-type mobile suit. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. I'll see you again in the next episode.